Every year around this time, Scott Wheeler, a writer who covers hockey prospects for The Athletic, creates a top 100 ranking of drafted NHL prospects from across the NHL. This is a pretty big undertaking. It's a big list. There's dozens of U23 prospects that are evaluated and sorted into tiers and ranked. So today we're going to take a look at where Blues prospects fall in his rankings and his tiers. Did he get it right? Are the Blues top prospects in the right tiers and spots in the ranking? And should anyone else have been on the list that was not included? In other news, the Blues make changes to their broadcast group for the upcoming season, and the 2025-26 season schedule has been released as well. We're going to talk about all that and more today on Note News. All right, welcome into another episode of Note News. It's John and Alec back with you. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast, and we go live twice a week, most weeks, talking all things Blues. And right now, that's off-season coverage. We're starting to get to that point of the off-season, Alec, where it's like we're gonna have to get creative with some of these episodes because the news is slowing considerably. But we'll power through, and we'll be here to provide some interesting hockey content as best we can all summer long until October when the season picks back up again. So if you'd like to, join us and join in the chat on our live streams or engage with us otherwise, the ways to do that are to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you haven't done that, we'd really appreciate if you would. We're really close to 500, which is the first monetization threshold on YouTube. So help us get there. That would be a huge boost for us to hit that milestone. Like this video as well. Follow, rate, review. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Wherever you listen, it does help us out. And then follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. Post a lot of great stuff over there. I also want to shout out here at the top, if you haven't checked out our last episode, go do that, because Alec did a really great job with our first ever prospect profile film review of Justin Carbono. So if you want to check that out, Alec, why don't you sort of summarize what that video is about and why people should check it out?
Yeah, so I did a film review of Carbono, and basically I just spliced together a highlight reel of some of his goals and some of his moments you'd like to see improvement from as well. So I tried to get the full picture of what kind of player the Blues drafted and how soon he can make an impact. And I sort of discussed about that. I discussed his fit on the team, what kind of roles he could play. I discussed even at the end a little player projection or comparisons for fun. So if you want all my thoughts on that, check it out. And it was quite an undertaking, so I appreciate all the support we've already gotten on the video.
Yeah, go show Alex some love on that video. Give it a watch, like, comment. Um, yeah, and if people like it, we might do some others as well. So let us know if that's something you're interested in. Okay, I feel like at the top we should talk about some pretty big news that most seems like almost across the board Blues fans are pretty upset about. Um, the Blues announced, and I guess FanDuel Sports Network and 101 ESPN sort of collectively announced and made the decision that um, the broadcast for Blues games is gonna be changing. So um, it's kind of crazy, right? I mean, Jamie Rivers and John Kelly will no longer be calling games for the broadcast, and instead they'll do a simulcast with Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale to do both the TV and radio play by play. Do I have that right? That those are that's what's happening. I mean, what are your
Mm.
thoughts like on this change? And it seems like most Blues fans are pretty upset about it, and it's not because of Kerber and Vitale. I think everyone agrees they do a great job. It's just sucks what happened with especially John Kelly. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it really is. It's such a radical, drastic shift to make, like kind of out of nowhere. Um, it took us all by surprise, and I think the outrage has been totally justified. I mean, the Kelly family has been the voice of the blues for like 40 years, and
Yeah,
our Kelly, John Kelly, was that for since I think 2004. So
2005.
since
Yeah,
yeah,
so yeah,
so
20 years.
that the past 2 decades of blues hockey have been voiced by John Kelly, and he's one of the best in the game. I mean, I'm sure he'll get another shot somewhere else, and that fan base and that franchise is lucky to have him. I still remember and still feel the pain of losing Darren Pang, and
Yeah,
especially, I mean, if Kelly goes to the Blackhawks, like I, oh, I shouldn't have even spoken that into existence, but hey, it happened with Panger.
that'll sting.
Yeah, but I don't know. Someone out there is getting a really, really, really talented play-by-play and just a great voice for hockey. And it really is an overall all around. There isn't really a positive about this. I mean, yeah, the silver lining is that Kerber and Vitaly are, in my opinion, like two of the best in the game. I don't. n- This isn't the time to be making comparisons between like Kerber and Kelly and Rivers and Vitaly, but they're terrific in their own right. I might prefer them a little bit, but that doesn't mean that I wanted to see this happen. And nothing away from them. I think they're going to do a phenomenal job. I have been on I have been on the Chris Kerber fan club for years
Oh
now,
yeah.
like 2017 or 18 or something, when I first really started getting into like I don't know, production and everything.
Hmm.
And he's awesome. I mean, I love his calls. I love the bring out the Zamboni every time. Um, I think fans are going to really warm up to Kerber. Those who haven't had the chance to hear him yet, and Vitali has been like analyst in between the periods, so fans might already be familiar with them. But yeah, losing JK and Jamie Rivers, and especially in the way that it happened, is really a travesty, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that we should continue, or we should like the outrage has been loud, and I think that's good. I don't think it's something that we should stop being outraged about, because
Hmm.
it felt like a backstab to not just Kelly, but to Blues fans as well.
Yeah.
And the only way to let them know is to continue to express your dissent. So keep it up, Blues fans. You're doing the right thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, big thanks to John Kelly and the Kelly family as a whole for sure. Okay, well, we got a lot to talk about. Why don't we go ahead and get into this prospect ranking? As I said at the top, this is a top 100 NHL drafted prospects who are under the age of 23 and have not yet established themselves, um, on their NHL club, um, which is a little bit subjective, that last part. But um, basically, Scott Wheeler, who covers prospects for the Athletic, every year does this ranking and um, breaks it down into tiers, um, and then within those tiers does an overall ranking of 1 to 100. Um, and I'm trying to figure out how many tiers there are exactly. I think it's five. Looking through the list now, yeah, 5 tiers. Um, and then,
Excuse me.
yeah, as I said, rankings within those tiers, and he also helpfully provides where each player sort of ranks in the position they play as well. So, um, for example, at the very top of tier one is Matthew Schaefer, and he's LHD1. He's the number one left-handed defenseman, number one overall, obviously. Um, and Jacob in the chat said, "Didn't you think the list was very 2025 draft biased?" I was listening to Scott Wheeler talk on a podcast about this ranking, and he's gotten that question a lot. And I think there is something to that. Like there is somewhat of a recency bias, but I think it's somewhat muted by the fact that um, the the best players from former drafts, most a lot of them have already graduated and established themselves and wouldn't be on this ranking. And what's left behind are good players for sure, but maybe not the best of the best. Um, and so you tend to see a lot more of the most recent draft work their way onto these lists. I'm not saying there isn't a little bit of that bias. That's just how he explained it, and it makes some sense, I think. And so, um, yeah, that's just addressing that question. So let's talk about the Blues players on this list, and they don't start until tier three. Tier one are names like Matthew Schaefer, as I mentioned, Michael Misa, Ivan Demidov, um, and then tier two um, is guys like James Hagens, Caleb Denoyer, Anton Frondel, Beckett Sinicki, Ryan Leonard, um, and then we get to tier three, which starts with the 16th overall player Simon Nemec. Um, and the first Blues player we see, well, actually, Alec, let me ask you, how do you want to do this? You want to work bottom up or top down?
Um, I don't
Should
know.
I? I'll just let's just go through all the ones real quick, and then we'll talk about them.
Okay.
So first Blues player is in tier three, as I mentioned, 27th overall, Jimmy Snuggerud. Um, he is the sixth right winger on the list. Um, and I think you could maybe say that he's kind of established himself, but the issue is just playing like the length, the duration of his stay in St. Louis last season. I think he will pretty quickly graduate from this list this coming season. But yeah, number 27th overall. The next, we've got Justin Carbono actually at 30th overall, also in tier three, the seventh right winger, right after Snug. Um, just drafted 19th overall by the Blues, and by all indications, looks like an awesome prospect, an awesome future player, and a future fan favorite perhaps. Again, go check out Alex film breakdown prospect profile for more info on Carbo. Okay, and then the next Blues player that we get is tier four, and it's Dalibor Dvorsky at 38th overall. So he's been demoted or whatever in the Blues system, or just moved, slotted down according to Scott Wheeler's rankings with the addition of Justin Carbono. Next, at the very, very end of tier, what are we on? Tier four. Logan Mayu at 70th overall. He's the last player in tier four, 70th overall on the rankings. And I should mention Dvorsky was the 12th center overall. Mayu is the 16th right-handed defenseman overall. And then into tier five, which is the last tier. This is where we see the last Blues prospect. At 91st overall, it's Theo Lindstein. So that's those are the Blues players on the list. It's an interesting ranking. We should go ahead and break it down. So do you want to start at the bottom with Lindstein and work our way up, or start with the big names at the top?
I think it makes more sense to start at the top, and then we can
Sweet.
sort of discuss where everyone falls, like, from that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Snuggerud, as I mentioned, he's 27th overall. He's around some names like TJ Ginla, Roger McQueen is a few spots ahead of him. Victor Eklund a few spots ahead of him. So that's like the caliber of player that he's ranked around. And then yeah, he's the sixth right winger overall. So I mean, I'm curious about your thoughts, Alec, of Snuggerud's placement in tier three at 27th overall as the sixth right winger. Do you have any thoughts on where he's placed in any of those regards, and um, whether there's something he's missing or whether he's kind of spot on?
Can you help me contextualize this and name some players in that tier two? Because tier one, I get, like, I would never
Yeah,
presume or claim that Snuggerud is like a Demidov, but
yeah.
who are some of the names in like tier two?
Tier two it spans from 8 to 15. We've got James Hagens, Porter Martone, Berkeley Catton, Dan Oye, Anton Frondel, Gabe Perreault, Beckett Sinicki, and Ryan Leonard. That's the full tier two.
That's interesting because I've seen like I know Perot especially is someone who was ranked very similarly to um, Snuggerud in the past, and they both are still on track. I mean, Snuggerud's a little bit more NHL ready, but I I'm gonna start by saying I think that this is a miss on
Mm,
Wheeler's part to have
yeah.
Snuggerud in tier three. Maybe it is just prospect fatigue. That's probably my guess here, but I think Snuggerud is absolutely the same caliber of prospect of those guys. The others maybe have the draft pedigree on Snuggerud, but Snug has proven more up to this point, and
Mm,
so I would argue that should put him in the similar caliber of player. Um, and so I think already like Snuggerud is such a fun, exciting prospect,
yeah.
not just for the Blues, but across the NHL. He's I think third in the Vegas odds for Calder, I believe.
Hmm.
Behind off the top of my head, it's Schaefer and Demidov. I'm not
Yeah,
sure. I should
Demidov.
look this up. Um,
Demidov's up
but
there, I know.
yeah. But I really do think that like someone who's arguably one of the Calder favorites, and is absolutely like proven that he can play in the NHL at this point, um, is for him to be a whole tier behind, this crop of players where they just recently got drafted and are exciting prospects too, but if the hope is that they can become what Jimmy Snuggerud is, I think that's totally fair. And so I would put them a little bit. I would put them in the same caliber.
So it looks like Snug is fifth in Calder odds.
Not
Demidov is
bad.
first, and it varies depending on, you know,
Hmm.
the sports book. But Demidov is first, Nikishin, Perek, Leonard, then Snug. And Zane Perek and Alexander Nikishin, or no, Zane Perek and Ryan Leonard, excuse me, have the same odds. Um, but Snuggerud at plus 1400, um, plus 1200 with Bet365. So depends on the
Interesting.
sports book, but yeah, somewhere around there.
That's like, yeah, to contextualize for those who might not be familiar, that's like an outside shot or maybe like not necessarily like the tier above a dark horse, like you're in the conversation, if not necessarily a favorite. So a little bit lower than what I was saying, but still, I think
Yeah,
in the conversation of Calder already before even playing a game next season is,
yeah.
in my eyes, I don't know.
And I should say these odds may have changed. I just that one was actually from before the draft. Let me look at
Gotcha.
FanDuel. See what they say. But yeah,
Gotcha.
either way, I think the point is, and I agree with you that this is. It seems like he's a little too low on Snuggerud, and you know, I'm not saying that he's going to win the Calder and he's going to be the best rookie and the generational talent or anything like that. I think he very well could. Um, I think that is in the realm of possibility for Snug, and that's where I think he's got it wrong. I think he's maybe being a little more conservative or playing a little more safe on his projections for Snuggerud. And this is a trend for Snuggerud. I mean, with the U.S. like national team development program, um, there was like a survey done. I think it was probably by Scott Wheeler, um, of his 2004 teammates, asking who's your most underrated teammate. Almost across the board, they said Snuggerud. So his peers have a lot of respect for him, and historically, he hasn't gotten that in a lot of regards. But I mean, he's such a well-rounded player, and I think came up and already had an impact. We saw it in St. Louis at the end of the season and into the postseason as well. So, um, yeah, I think I agree. A little bit too low on Snug. I would put him maybe in the upper 20s or low teens or something like that.
And not just
Um,
he earned the respect of his peers, but he's earned the respect of Doug Armstrong, who
yeah,
is not always an easy man to please. At least as just the job of an NHL GM is not an easy one to please after 7 or technically 14 games.
yeah,
For him to be in conversations for getting top line minutes, I don't know if that will happen. But even to be in that conversation, like at his age, yeah, I mean, this is too low.
yeah. I agree. Um, the first curveball comes at the next spot, I think. Uh, and maybe I'm wrong, but Justin Carbono at 30th overall, and also in tier three with Snug. He's just 3 spots behind Jimmy Snuggerud. Um, so the seventh right winger on the board and second best prospect in the Blues system according to Scott Wheeler. And um, I think this is pretty interesting, and maybe this is some of that 2025 draft bias or something like that. But um, I mean, my thoughts seeing Carbono this high and above Dvorsky, who has the advantage as a center with serious upside. I was kind of surprised. I mean, you just did a prospect profile film breakdown on Justin Carbono. If anyone hasn't watched that yet, go watch it. It's fantastic. Alec did a great job. What are your thoughts on this, Alec? I mean, because you've done a lot of thinking about the player that Carbono is and his ceiling and his floor. So I'm curious to hear your reaction to Carbo at 30th overall and second in the Blues system, also in tier three with Snug.
I agree with some of this discussion, but not all of it. Like I agree with Carbono being in this tier three. I think he is a tier below a Snuggerud. And I mean Dvorsky, which we'll get to, is just.
Yeah,
Anyways, um, I think I agree with this placing. Having Carbono being the second best Blues prospect is a take. It's not an obscene take in my opinion. I could actually see a case to be made for Carbono to be the second best Blues prospect. I think the top three, there is a case to be made for all of them. Now I don't think they're all on equal footing in my eyes, but I think yeah, I think there's a case to be made for Carbono to be the second best Blues prospect. And at 30th overall, I just am going to be honest. I don't know enough about every prospect to say whether 30th is
sure.
around the right ranking, but it sounds right. Maybe a little bit high, but I would probably guess more around like 35. So not really
Hmm.
like that much of a difference. Um,
Yeah, he's got him
yeah,
above
Carbo's awesome.
Got him above Callum Ritchie, Cole Iserman, and David Yurchek, who round out the end of tier three.
Okay, it does sound like there's a lot of prospect fatigue on this ranking of just like guys who have been talked about for so long that I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so.
Um, anyways, so
And yeah, and this is one guy's ranking, right? So it's definitely got to be taken with a grain of salt. And I know that he does he's intentional about getting it proofread by scouts he trusts and other athletic writers and stuff like that. But still, it
mhm.
is his opinions. But yeah, go on.
Yeah. So to contextualize this for the Blues, I think I think the most interesting discussion here is having Carbonneau as the second best prospect because his upside is definitely up there with like a Snuggerud to be like a true first liner and like a difference making first liner.
Yeah,
Um, Carbo can absolutely be that. He's got some ways to go before he gets there, but definitely, if you're ranking on pure upside alone, I think there's a lot more of a case for Carbonneau to be higher than a guy like Dvorsky, who is just with his hockey sense and his IQ is just a very high floor prospect with a high ceiling too. But probably, I would say Carbonneau is a little bit higher ceiling than Dvorsky.
yeah, I think
And
he's going.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I've talked about it a few times. The things I love most about Carbonell, I feel like are some of the most important things for a prospect to hit or a young player to develop into like a really
Mm,
solid NHLer, if not a star. He's got that compete that you just can't. You'd have a hard time coaching in compete to a player at they're getting to be an adult, and you know the their style of hockey is getting less and less malleable, right? And so that's a hard thing to coach into a player that doesn't have it. Carbono has a lot of it, which I really like. Physical guy, fast and skilled enough. He's not like super skilled, but he's skilled enough, I think, to be like a really solid second liner, if not a first liner. Um, yeah, love Carbo.
Yeah, absolutely. He's has a lot of like very raw aspects about him that you like you said you really can't coach. Like his skill alone is just like so tantalizing.
Yeah,
Um and there's a lot to like about Carbonell. He's got a long way to go though. It's probably going to take, 2 or 3 years before he really turns into the full player he could become.
yeah,
Especially given his age and everything. So, but I think that's to be expected. But yeah, having Carbonell this far above Dvorsky. I mean, I guess we'll get into the Dvorsky talk. I don't want to lean too much into that, but I guess what I'll add to close out on contextualizing Carbonell within the system is I think that having Carbonell does offer a lot of what the Blues were missing in their
yeah,
prospect pool. Even if it is another winger, it's a winger that the Blues did not have. Like none of the closest guy would be maybe like a Mercick or something, but Mercick is not going to produce the upside of what Carbonell is going to become. So, um, definitely like a difference making prospect, changes the timeline for the Blues. It just still might be a little ways out, but I could see a case for him being higher than Dvorsky, or I could see a case for Snuggerud being third. Um, Within the top three, but I think they're all, to me, these guys are all in kind of the same tier. Maybe you'd say because Snuggerud proved it, he's elevated himself to the next
hmm
tier up, whereas the other guys haven't proved it yet. But at least they should be very close together, which they are not.
yeah. Not super. I think this is a good segue to go ahead and start talking about Dvorsky because I think this is the if Carbo being that high is not the first shocker or whatever, this definitely is. I mean, for a long time it was Dvorsky and Snug sort of battling it out for the top spot in the system, and they were pretty close. And a lot of people um, were a lot higher on Dvorsky's ceiling and thought he was just the jewel of the blues system, for lack of a better term. And he's I think done a good job addressing the areas of his game that were a little more concerning or not quite as um, not quite as well developed, especially for someone who we'd like to pan out as a center, right? And um, things like adding size and speed. I think he's done a good job sort of adding size and getting a little bit faster. He's not the best skater, but he's done a good job working on that, I think, and developed a little bit. Strong, strong in the faceoff circle. I think he's adding to his game where it's important for a center to be well developed and to be a solid player. And um, I'm just really surprised to see Dvorsky this low. And honestly, when I read Wheeler's description of Dvorsky, I'm surprised he ranked him this low based on the things he was saying about him. I mean, he for them like had overwhelmingly positive things to say about him, saying things like he's highly talented, intelligent playmaker. He can carve it through. He can control the pace of play, solid finishing um, and playmaking and facilitating, hanging on to pucks. Like he has so many good things to say about Dvorsky um, that I was surprised based on his own take that Dvorsky was at 38th overall in Tier 4 and the 12th center on the board. So, I mean, what are your thoughts? Excuse me. What are your thoughts on Dvorsky at this spot?
I think it's crazy that he's this low. I think this is totally a case of another case of prospect fatigue of just like he's been a prospect for so long that um that it's a failure, and Dvorsky is a failure, which I think is just a crazy way to think about a player, because the guy is still 20 years old. Like, I don't think the expectation for 20-year-olds should be that they
Yeah.
should be top 50 players in the NHL yet.
And if I may just add this in here real quick, he was one of the youngest players in that draft as well, in
Hmm.
2023. He's on the young side.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think this is absolutely a crazy ranking because Dvorsky is like in a similar tier with um Snuggerud and Carbono, like we've been saying, and he's just his tools are maybe not as exciting, but still very relevant and noticeable. But definitely, like you highlighted, his ability to just get better and get better every year has definitely been on display. And like it's coming with Dvorsky. Like the time is now. This is his first real season to play in the NHL. You know, think about the timeline of like Zach Bolduc cracked the NHL around this time, which I don't know if that name still hurts to bring up. Sorry, everyone, but um, like this, it was the exact same timeline, and then he had an awesome rookie year. Dvorsky's on the same time; he's just a year removed because of his age and draft year.
Hmm.
But and doing all of that as a center, I mean, this guy is like a true playmaker at center. To like the um, sorry, I'm losing my words here of the same type of player as Robert Thomas. I'm not saying Dvorsky's going to become Robert Thomas, though I think that's a possibility. But like the same type of center as a Thomas, probably more of a 2C long term. But this guy will make assists that just make your jaw drop. He is so smart. He is
Yeah.
so good with the puck on his stick in ways that can be coached, but the his he has like a preternatural feel for the ice and where to manipulate and take space and create offense that absolutely will translate to the NHL in a way that like he's of Carbono, Snuggerud, and Dvorsky. Dvorsky's by far the safest of those three to become like a legitimate NHL contributor because of that floor with his hockey IQ and his hockey sense. Sure, he might not ever be a good skater. Like in a worst case, say he never turns out as a skater, he still can provide offense like a Marco Rossi
Hmm.
as just this playmaking, you know, not as fast, not as mobile, but still capable and super smart. Like we've seen that work in the NHL, and that's like the floor for Dvorsky is to be, you know, a 50-point center. And
Yeah.
at his, I should say at his peak, like at his prime, like not necessarily this coming season.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, this is so low. This is so insanely low. I have no I can't even conceptualize like how you justify a ranking like this because he has done nothing to lower his stock. He's still 20 years old. He's still like just played like 2 games in the NHL. Um, they just haven't given him the run at center yet. He's been great in the AHL, absolutely
Hmm.
tearing it up there and scoring goals too, like dominating in the faceoff dot. Like I this is way too low, and I just don't get it. And I think I don't know. Dvorsky's going to make this, as they say, ranking aged like milk. So I'll be conducting the hype train when that happens.
Yeah. And I'll be on board for sure. Let's move it along here. We got a couple more to talk about. But yeah, again, just to summarize, Dvorsky way too low. Got serious skills, um, and similar to why I like Carbo. You know, hockey IQ is like that's a tough area to coach, and that can be a big ingredient, you know, in a successful recipe for a prospect to pen out. So I love his IQ for sure. And how old is he now?
20.
20 years old?
Still
Yeah,
20. He's 20 years old.
still 20. It's so early for Dvorsky. I don't get the hate or the you know being low on him. Okay, let's move on. The next there's a bit of a jump before the next Blues player, and it's a recently acquired Blues player, Logan Mayu, defenseman acquired in a trade with Montreal. Um, he comes in at 70th overall at the end of tier four, so technically in the same tier as Dvorsky, although much lower on the list. Um, and he is the 16th right-handed defenseman on the list. Um, we've talked a lot about Mayu in recent you know recent episodes, sort of reacting to the trade and talking about the player he could become. So if you want to hear like our full dive into Logan Mayu, we've got a couple recent episodes. One where we had Mike Meyer on, a special guest, to talk about him. But yeah, I mean, this is a young defenseman who has some rough areas to his game, but the offensive upside is really exciting. Um, when I said when I read the list to you before the episode, and I said Logan Mayu at 70th overall and in tier four, you said, I think, was it about Mayu or was it about Dvorsky where you said that's a take?
Um, about Dvorsky.
Okay. Well, still, I do want your take on Logan Mayu at 70th overall, the first defenseman on the list for the Blues. So, um, yeah, like, what are your thoughts on him in this tier and you know the I guess fourth ranked prospect in the Blues system?
Mayu as a fourth ranked prospect is really fascinating. I guess I mean it makes sense. It makes sense with the upside and that he's closer to the NHL, but I do think missing a guy like Adam Utacek on this list is also really interesting. I not necessarily disagree with it, but just also what we're going to get to with Lindstein. There's just a lot of, I guess, confusion here, but I guess if you're going by ceiling alone, between Mayu and Yurchek, you could probably make a case either way. I would say, but I think Mayu is probably closer to reaching his ceiling than a Yurchek. So that's probably why we got him over um, Adam. But I I I guess with Mayu, there is still a floor of really okay, not there is still a floor that's pretty low with Mayu. So to have him in the
Mm-hmm.
same tier as Dvorsky, and I get there's 32 placing difference
Yeah.
between the two, and it isn't necessarily comparable. But to have them in the same tier is like I just do not understand that at all. Like Dvorsky will become an NHL player. There is a chance that Mayu doesn't. It's a very low chance. Like I would put it at under 5% that he just can't play in the NHL. So I'm not necessarily raising the warning flag, Blues fans, but I do think that there is a real possibility that Mayu becomes something like. I mean, the easy comp is Evan Bouchard, and it makes sense. I don't know that necessarily he has it. Like, I'm not saying he has the point scoring ability of Bouchard, but like diet Evan Bouchard kind of,
Yeah.
because his defensive lowlights are lowlights for sure. And with Mayu, um, to have Mayu in the same tier as Dvorsky really confuses me. But to talk about Mayu and less about Dvorsky here, I mean, he is really fun. And to get him on the biggest thing about this trade to me, or one of the biggest things about this trade, is the fact that we got him on the right side is absolutely like cannot take that part out of the equation because right shot defensemen are at a premium right now in the NHL. Nobody can find a defenseman on the right side. And to get a young player with upside on the right side is something that could really turn out to be a brilliant move by Army, but we still have to see it with a guy like Mayu for sure. I am a little bit surprised by Army's comments of like he has a job, he just has to
Hmm.
not lose it.
Hmm.
I would like to see a little bit more competition for Mayu, force him to kind of work on that, but also I will blindly believe that Monty can fix everything. So hey, why not? Why can't it work? I guess, but I think um, I think with Mayu this first year I've made this take before. I think this first year could still look pretty ugly. I think he could score a lot of points, but there is a chance that, he still just has some real head scratching, eye rolling, like face
Yeah.
slapping plays that you're just like, come on, man. For it to be his first full season in the NHL, that's to be expected with anybody, but I think especially with Mayu, I think this year could be a little bit tough to watch and the upside will be there. I think he'll still be putting up points, but I think the defense is still not going to be ready. And again, just to have him in a tier with Dvorsky truly, truly baffles me. But
Yeah. To be
otherwise,
fair, he's one spot away from being in the next tier, but yeah, no, I agree. That is how tiers work.
yeah, um, yeah. So I, I guess I think that Mayu probably could exceed this ranking on not probably could definitely exceed this ranking on the prospect list, but I think it's probably a fair spot to put him for now because there's a chance that it falls off. And furthermore, like I think it would take some time, like years ahead, before we realize that this would be the that this ranking was too low.
Yeah. So you do think it is too low?
No, no, not necessarily. Like I think it'll take time before
You just
we
think it'll take time
realize that
before we
it. Yeah, yeah,
can make
yeah.
that call.
I think
Gotcha.
it's actually a fair ranking for right now as a prospect where he sits, but
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
put some respect on Dvorsky's name.
I think, yeah, I think he's got real talent, real upside, like you said. It's just his holes and, um, you know, weaknesses are big enough and significant enough that it drops him down. So high risk, high reward with a guy like Mayu. I think I agree. Somewhere around this, this is about right. Okay, what about our last guy? A maybe a little surprising, although I don't know, like just a really solid prospect. I think what's more surprising is just that not that he could be in the top 100, but that um, there aren't others on the list that are also in the top 100. But um, we can get to the point here. Number 91 in Tier 5 is Theo Lindstein. He's the 14th left-handed defenseman on the board, the last Blues prospect on this ranking. Um, and according to Wheeler here, the fifth best prospect in the system. And so, um, again, like this is a word I've used to describe Lindstein before, but I'll say it again, just solid. Like he just feels like a really solid prospect. I don't think he like stands out or shines in any one area other than just being well rounded and solid in all these areas. Like that's where he shines, right? It's just being a pretty well rounded guy. So I really like Lindstein. This feels like a fair ranking to me, um, and I feel like he is like a pretty safe bet to establish himself as an NHLer. Won't be a star, nothing like that, but really solid prospect, as I said, and yeah, a good bet to play on on the bottom four at some point. What are your
Can you
thoughts
hit
on
a quick Control F for me?
for sure?
Can you look up EJ Emery and then there was another player if he's on the list, and then there was another player who I think the Flames picked, but I can't remember who. Did they make the list?
Um, who was the first?
EJ Emery, EMERY.
Emery is not on the list.
Okay, interesting.
Who was the
Well, that's
other?
cool. I can't remember, so it's fine. Just they're kind of similar-ish prospect comps that to have Lindstein over them is cool. I don't really know if I agree or disagree, but I like it because it means my team gets the better player. Um, but yeah, Lindstein to have him on the top 100 list is pretty surprising just because like you said he's not a very flashy guy. He's not a guy who's going to draw a lot of attention. And so to get sort of respect in that way is pretty cool for Lindstein. And like I honestly like again, not to the same degree or caliber, but I see a lot of Colton Pareko to his game. And I could see a world where they sort of pan out as this complementary, like on different pairs, but similar roles of complementary skill sets that are just so good enabling other skaters to do their thing because they're just so able to slow down the pace of play of the opposing team. Um, and so for Linsting to make the list is sort of like you know, a W for Scotty here.
Yeah,
Just
I think so.
that's a fun name, and I don't know if I was this into prospect rankings, I don't know if Lindstein would make my top 100, but like I see it, and
Hmm.
I have a lot of respect for the player. Um, I hate to always make these negative, but not having Yinnechek on the list over Lindstein is another just like head scratching decision, I guess, that I just don't really understand because sure the floor is a lot lower because Lindstein's like the highest floor, high floor prospect ever, but I, the ceiling is not even comparable. Lindstein could be a very solid bottom four helper. Yinnechek can like at his ceiling can become a serious top four threat. I I don't really get having them in different tiers like this and having them um okay, thanks to Jacob in the chat. He was an honorable mention, but still like to have him over Lindstein or to have
Yeah,
Lindstein
it's
over
interesting.
Yinnechek is just I just don't really understand the logic there because the type of player the whole rest of the list seems to be like shooting for upside and that's what we're ranking on. Lindstein does not have the upside of Yinnechek, but he's just a
Hmm.
lot safer. But I mean, I'm kind of using this segment to talk about both players here.
Yeah,
I think
that's fair.
Lindstein's awesome. Um, I think he's going to be so forgettable to watch on the ice, and as a defenseman, that is what I love. That just
Yeah,
touches my
it's not
heart
bad at all.
when I don't have to worry about you and you're doing exactly what you need to do every shift, making the safe play and just like doing the right thing every time. That's just chef's kiss. Um, and so with Lindstein, like he is going to absolutely contribute to this team in one way or another at some point. What role that is, I can't necessarily say. I think it's probably a wait and see with him. I would like to imagine he'll get some run on the third pair, maybe this season. It's getting close to his timeline approaching, but definitely by next season we'll see him in the NHL. And how high he goes from there, if he stays a third pair guy, if he moves up, I think that depends more on like the complementary moves that the Blues make around him and around the rest of the roster. Um, so yeah, I'm super excited to watch Lindstein and super excited to forget forget about Lindstein in the nicest way possible. Um,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
I
that's what you want for someone who doesn't have any standout tools. If you notice him, that's probably not a good thing, right?
mhm. I say that all tongue in cheek too. Like he
Yeah, I
is
know
he is going to be a great player.
for sure.
And then I kind of want to take a second about you to check here. So I'll before I pivot, I'll let you go on Lindsay if you have anything.
No, I mean, I don't think I have much to add. Just I think the ranking is based on him being a safer bet. And it seems like there wasn't one single science or method to the madness here. This is a ranking based on upside, or this is a ranking based on floor. I think with each player, it's a case by case basis, and that's probably what Wheeler was doing. And when it comes to a guy like Lindstein, his the safety of that bet, I think, is where he stands out, and probably why he got a mention down the list here. But yeah, no, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Juracek and you know uh, him not being on this list. Let me look at like the names at the bottom of this list. I mean, it's, to be honest, a lot of guys that I don't know. I mean, Malcolm Spence, I know he's 97, but I know him because he was just in this most recent draft. Excuse me. I mean, Brad Lambert is down here. Sasha Bover is down here. Seamus
Hmm.
Casey,
Hmm.
Quentin Musty.
Musty, that was the other guy I was thinking about.
Okay,
I
well,
knew
he's
I couldn't get Quentin
Sharks guy.
Burns out of my head, but I knew it wasn't Burns.
Yeah,
What
Musty's
ranking is he?
81st.
Really?
Um, yeah,
Okay.
Connor
Okay.
Geeky, Braden Yeager,
Okay.
they're in the 70s. So like, you know, those are the types of players, and you know, as a reader of the Athletic occasionally, or as a reader of Scott Wheeler occasionally, I should say. Um, I know some of his takes on Juracek, and I am also really surprised to see him drop out of these rankings and sort of the upper tier of the Blues list. Especially, I don't think he had a standout season, but he played hockey again, and still looked skilled this year in the OHL, and so yeah, just like knowing how high he has been on Juracek in the past, I was surprised to see him fall out of the top 100 completely. So, um, yeah, what I mean, I think you might have more thoughts on here. Let it rip.
Yeah, it is really surprising. It's another like head scratching decision from Wheeler that I just don't really see how you can rank a guy. I think this one may have, I don't know, just slipped through the cracks, or maybe it's still more prospect fatigue, which it feels like I've been saying a lot at this point, but it does I do, I guess I do maybe lean more in the camp of there might be some recency bias, or at least recency, like it's on the front of your mind,
Hmm.
which I guess is recent. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that Gitacek is a much higher ceiling player than Lindstein. I would say his ceiling is not necessarily as high as the top three on the roster, but it's probably comparable with the Mayu. I think I personally would put Mayu's above Yudacek's, but I think that there's an argument either way. Um, and I I think that I guess I guess I'm just trying to rationalize, like he hasn't played a lot, and so maybe it's a injury. Like if he had played more, he would have been a top 100. I could see that, but I still think it's a little bit not being honest to say like, well, okay. I mean, I understand the availability side of it, but I do think that if you're looking at these guys as players, and to be honest, like when I delve more into it on a piece I wrote for Bleeding Blue a while back, Unicek's injuries were pretty freak injuries. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to completely write them off, but it was like a bad hit that he took to the knee and then
Hmm.
got hit again in the same spot. Like, you can't necessarily
Yeah.
call a guy injury prone for taking a hockey play, and like that happens on those kinds of things, and then re-aggravating it through no fault of his own. Like, I don't really know that I'm holding that against him as a player. And so I guess I guess I think that this one's probably a miss. I would put him at least in that like 80-70 range with Mayu, and you
Hmm.
could debate between the two who you have higher, who you have lower, because I think they're pretty comparable. They're pretty similar.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say like between the two, I probably like. Mayu's offense a little bit more, but I like Yudacek's defense a lot more. So on the whole, I'd probably pick Yudacek, but I think Mayu can outproduce him. So I'd probably put him somewhere in that like high 70s ranking where he has um, Mayu already. But yeah, I am definitely perplexed as to why he didn't make the list because it just doesn't really check in my eyes.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Um, I found it took me a little while, but I found this same ranking from last year. So this was after the 2024 draft. Just going down the Blues players in Tier 4, Jimmy Snuggerud at 34th, Dalibor Dvorsky at 51st. So both moved up. Devo quite a bit so, but I mean, I think he was obviously a lot lower on Dvorsky back then. Tier 6, Otto Stenberg at 86th, 91, Adam Juracek, 94, Theo Lindstein. Um, so it seems like last year, right after the draft, before we saw a little bit of Juracek in the OHL, he had him down in the 90s anyway. And I think there were you know enough, I guess, just enough players drafted that were better than him this year that he just got bumped down. But um, I agree. I feel like even 91st last year felt a bit low to me. Anyways, I think that's the big miss. I mean, I could see a case for Otto Stenberg, but I think there's just a lot of good uh, players, you know, from this most recent draft class. Any others that you think deserve a mention in maybe not in the top 100, but maybe a mention in the honorable mentions, or um, should be mentioned in the same breath with some of these guys?
I mean, I think we should talk about Stenberg as a
Sure.
guy who is often compared um, with Lindstein because they were drafted together, both Swedes. He's actually good friends with Dvorsky, which is
Yeah.
fun. But personally, I understand why. I think Stenberg had a really disappointing season. Play a lot in the SHL, and just it was not the right spot for him. He was not getting deployed, and then when he was playing against grown men and not really producing. And I don't know that you can not blame him for like a very limited role against 30 something year olds as a 19, 20-year old to not be producing. So I think he kind of had a lost season a little bit, and when he got to the AHL, he looked better, but didn't get a lot of run time just with the timing and everything. So Stenberg is someone who I would be looking to get back onto the list, but I think makes sense why he's off the list for now. And also, I think if we're realistically projecting, like Lindstein could be a bottom four contributor versus Stenberg's probably a bottom six winger. Just in general, like between the two, which one of those would you say is the more valuable positional like versatility or like
Yeah.
how valuable it is? Personally, I would lean towards the defenseman, just given minutes and everything. But that is also, that might change person to person.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the top 100, and we're running a little low on time. So why don't we go ahead and pivot to talking about the Blues schedule? This is something else we wanted to talk about. Schedule was released for the upcoming 2025-26 season. Um, the Blues will open the season at home on October 9th against the Minnesota Wild. So that should be a fun way to start the season. Um, let's see, just reading through some
It's
of
going to be
the.
so loud.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
for
First
sure.
hockey action since the what happened. I mean, oh man, that game's going to be awesome. I'll definitely be in attendance.
Yeah, yeah, that should be a fun one. Just looking through some of the like quick hit highlights from the Blues website on their sort of press release about the season schedule. They'll play a total of 26 Central Division games, 4 matchups each, with Chicago, Dallas, Nashville, Utah, and Winnipeg, um, and then 24 games against Pacific Division opponents. and then a home and home set with each of the 16 Eastern Conference teams, is what they say. So um, there will also, this is notable as well. There will be a break from February 5th through the 25th for the Olympics. I am so excited that this is happening. Um,
Yes. After 4 nations.
After Four Nations, I cannot. Winter Olympics is so fun in general. I cannot wait for NHL players to be back in the action. It should be an awesome Winter Olympics and to see hockey back at its best again in the Winter Olympics. I can't wait. It's gonna be so exciting.
And the international jerseys are just so sweet, and
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have that marked in my calendar.
For sure. So, I mean, where do you want to start with our schedule discussion?
I really think, like, I've been looking at the schedule for kind of some time now, and I really think it's like very favorable. It's a very balanced schedule. Um yeah, Ace in the chat, but we don't have an extremely long road trip. The longest
We
road trip we
do have
have is
one.
a 5 game stretch
Yeah.
of Toronto, Philly, Islanders, Rangers, Devils, all with like night breaks in between. So no back to backs. And arguably, there's 2 or 3 winnable games in a 5 game stretch. Like, really not all that bad. And then the worst stretch at home is pretty much the month of January. January will be tough, or well, that not necessarily at home, but January, excuse me, January just will be tough in general. It's like starting on the 9th, it's at Utah, at Vegas, Carolina at home, Tampa at home, at Oilers, at Jets, at Dallas, Kings at home, Dallas at home, Florida at home. So that'll be a gauntlet for sure. But they kind of like jam packed all the difficulty into January because the rest of the schedule is just very balanced. Like, the hardest stretch at home is um probably where is it? Where is it? There's a 3 gamer with, I want to say, I thought it was Edmonton. I guess not. Um Probably this Kings Dallas Florida stretch is going to be pretty tough, at least on a first glance here. And um, but even then, like, most of their difficult matchups come, it's like tough game, easy game,
Yeah.
or like 3 tough games and then 2 easy games. Or there's a lot of chance. My point is, there's a lot of chance to build momentum for this season. And what has
Yeah.
like been the biggest Achilles heel of the Blues the past 4 or 5 years is starting out slow. They have
Mm-hmm.
not been able to come out of the gate hot, and that has really set them back. This season, it's doable. I won't say it's just a cakewalk to start the season. We start obviously Minnesota at home, then at Calgary, at Vancouver. So 2 competitive games, but winnable. Chicago at home, winnable game. Then it's Dallas at home, Kings at home, Utah at home. Those will be tougher. At Detroit, at Pittsburgh, Detroit at home, Canucks at home. So, like, you'd like to think and hope, at least I would, that there's some winnable stretch of hockey there. Like, I think that can
Yeah.
be an over 500 month. And if you can start over 500, like, I don't know that we have started over 500 since like 2021 or 2022. Um, and so getting out to a hot start, plus this kind of mixed balance of not being too terribly difficult for too much of the schedule, I think like this could be a really exciting season for the Blues in a Central Division that's going to be extremely tough. This schedule really favors the Blues to nab one of those potentially even divisional spots. So I would take a look at it, Blues fans, because it is, and also make sure we pack those home games because we saw the power of what
Oh
can
yeah.
happen in that win stretch and then in the playoffs. But yeah, I am very, very hopeful.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. It's seems like a pretty favorable schedule. I also wanted to highlight the end of the season. So like April is crunch time, especially if they're battling for a like the third divisional spot or one of the wild card spots. That'll be
Or the
a
Presidents.
critical, or the President's Trophy. It'll be a critical part of the season schedule. So, just looking at April, just to read through their April games because I think it's important. April 1st. I mean, because we just saw come right down to the wire for the Blues this past season. So, April 1st in LA against the Kings. The third against the Ducks, the fifth and the seventh against the Avs, the ninth against the Jets, the 11th against the Blackhawks, 13th against the Wild, 14th against the Penguins, and 16th against the Mammoth. So, um, kind of a mixed bag there. There's some tougher opponents and some not so tough opponents, but I think for the most part it's decent competition.
Hmm.
So hopefully they'll be able to take care of business early in April or before we get to that point. But you know, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, what are your like? Do you have any thoughts on April or because I agree with your assessment at the beginning of the season that'll be really important. What about the end of the season? What are your thoughts on the competition?
So my Homer assessment, let me just make that disclaimer that this is totally Blues bias um, pulling in here, is that this is the exact kind of April schedule you want to go into the playoffs because it's not too easy to where you just waltz in and you're super cold coming into postseason play and you just can get trampled by a hot team. But it's not too hard to where you're like gassed and you're barely able to make it in at the finish line. It's like just that right amount of difficulty to where it'll talent challenge the team, it'll push them, it'll be tough, but then you've got, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see where Minnesota's at potentially, of like winnable games that can get you some points to finish out the season. And more importantly, like set the momentum in the right direction. And so my totally biased take here is that it's a really good, April schedule, but definitely like could be a tough month. They're gonna have to do some winning. Like they have opportunities to win, a lot of winnable games, and they don't really have opportunities to miss out on those. So under Jim Montgomery, the Blues didn't have this problem unless it was 6-on-5, but the Blues were able to um not like drop games that they shouldn't most of the time, and every time that they were tested last season they won. Like they answered every call every time.
Mm-hmm.
But really, like I'll be watching very closely those tough matchups and those like the or not the tough matchups, the easy matchups. I really think that those you really don't want to drop games, especially later in the season, because the late season push is going to be difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I
My
agree.
fault.
I think that could work out okay. A mixed bag of easier opponents and some challenges. So the other thing I wanted to highlight is this is quoting Jeremy Rutherford over at the Athletic. The NHL trade deadline is March 6th, so the Blues will have just 4 games from the time they return to the Olympic break before the deadline. Those games are February 26th versus the Seattle Kraken, February 28th, New Jersey Devils, and then March 1st in Minnesota, March 4th in Seattle. So that's what they're looking at before the trade deadline. So, you know, if they're if they have some decisions to make, they'll have a few games against. Honestly, like that's not a bad stretch. You get to play Seattle twice, and no one really knows what they're doing. And then the Wild and the Devils feel like they're in sort of a similar tier when it comes to you know teams for this upcoming season. So yeah, that's another interesting thing to note. Um, and then lastly, the Blackhawks will be playing in St. Louis on October 15th and on December 12th. Um, and then the first rematch against Winnipeg will be on December 17th at home. So I think that's a team that's sort of has become one that I don't like so much. So, and not just because they beat us, but because of how that series was played. Anyways,
Yeah.
um, any
Yeah.
thoughts on trade deadline or any key matchups you want to highlight?
Um, the uh No, I don't think so. I think the Central Division games are spaced out really nicely. Typically, like, if Dallas is giving us trouble, they're spaced out. I mean, they backloaded the Colorado games, but we were able to beat them last season.
Yeah.
Not necessarily saying that we'll be able to do so again, but um, the Utah games are really spaced out, so you get to. I don't necessarily know if that's better or worse. I could spin it both ways, but yeah, I think the Central Division isn't like last season. It was all at the start and then all at the end. It feels like there's a good mix this season. So Ace, that'd be hilarious. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Awesome. I think that'll do it for our episode today. So this has been a fun one. We appreciate everyone's thoughts on prospects and you know these rankings and our thoughts on those. And yeah, if you missed our thoughts on the John Kelly firing and then Scott Wheeler's top 100 uh, athletic prospects, go back to the beginning of this episode and check it out. Um, I think we will be back probably this weekend sometime, or if not then early next week. So we'll be back soon to talk about some more blues stuff. And as I said, we are in the off season, so our episodes will get a little bit more fun, a little bit more creative. At least we'll do our best to keep things interesting. Um, now that we're in the dog days of summer here.
And I have an announcement ish,
Sure.
um, more of a teaser still, but so that film series I just did, that or the film review I should say,
Hmm.
looking for any comments on that, but also like I'd be willing to do more of those, or if you guys have any other ideas for series that we could do, please feel free to put those in the comments. Also, we have another very exciting project that I'm personally very excited about coming out pretty soon. I won't give a date, but it'll be ready when it's ready and should be a lot of fun for I think all types of blues fans. So keep it tuned. We're mixing up our content a little bit into the summer, and yeah, you won't want to miss it. So subscribe here on YouTube.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, we appreciate everyone tuning in and joining us as they always do. Some familiar faces, some new faces. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'd appreciate it if everyone would subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. That's really the best way to help us out, and we are getting really close to 500, which, as I said at the beginning, is our first threshold to monetize our YouTube channel. So helping us cross that finish line and that milestone, that would be a big help. So we'd appreciate it if everyone would subscribe, like this video, follow, rate, review on audio or on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Those ratings and reviews really do help us out. So be sure to do that. And then follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. Post a lot of other great stuff. We hope to interact with all of you on all these great platforms. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of Note News. We'll see you next time, and let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues, baby.